spend a lot of time speaking about leaders, the good, the bad, the ugly, and I was thinking about how to prepare for today and what stories would be interesting for you. And I thought I'd tell you about one of the best people leaders I have personally experienced. And this is a guy called Danny. Now, I worked for Danny when I was at Intel Corporation, and the first thing to notice was that I was in Munich and he was in Swindon. So despite our distance, and this is about 14 years ago now, I noticed how good I felt around him. So we worked remotely a lot. We were always on Skype. Like that was what we used a lot of at the time. Skype chat, or sometimes like big calls with the teams. But I really noticed how great I felt around him. And I started to think, well, what was it about him? And I really noticed a few key things that made me feel so good around him. And the first one was that he gave me a huge amount of trust and responsibility. So I just felt all of that. I felt that all that faith he had in me. The second was he really listened to me about what I wanted from the role. So he let me shape the role. And he was also really humble and kind. And he was such a good leader that I went back to him, worked for him a few years later. This time I was in Swindon, not in Munich, so a bit less vice beer going on, but a few more roundabouts. But nevertheless, Danny and I were back together. And that trust and autonomy he gave me, that just accelerated. So more autonomy, more control. And for example, he let me run this huge conference that moved around Europe. It was called the Intel Education Summit. And he would say to me something like, near the beginning stages, to say we were hosting in Stockholm, he'd say, right, well, we need this Minister for Education for Stockholm, and we've got this Intel VP coming over. The rest is up to you. And I was like, wow, like this, are you sure? Are you sure you don't want to like check what I'm doing? And he'd be like, it's fine, build whatever you want with panels, workshops, figure it out with the agency, the event agency, and all of that. And so I really thrived in this environment. I also struggle with stress as well. That's a different talk, but we can talk about that another time. But I thrived in many ways because I had all this control, I had all this autonomy, and I got to be really creative with what I was doing. And I started to ask myself, because I've worked with a lot of leaders since then, and I recently started to ask myself, what was it about Danny that meant he could give away so much power in this way? Because I don't witness this everywhere. I don't witness leaders who offer so much responsibility out. What was it about his personality, the way he was made up, that meant he could do this for me? And I think this was down to Danny's sense of self-esteem and the fact he was really whole as a person. So he did not need to prove himself to himself or to anyone else. He could give away power to me, and he didn't need to be, super visible. He could be visible when he needed to be, but he didn't need to prove himself. So he could hand that power to me and be really fully behind me. And so the point is that he actually focused a lot on the way he looked after himself, his own time for himself, his own confidence. He protected that quite fiercely, I would say. And this means that the way you look after yourself has a really big impact on other people. And I think a lot of people sort of know this cognitively. They know that, oh yeah, I need to look after myself, blah, blah. But actually they don't really do it. And they don't realize that what that means is they end up doing things like micromanaging and gossiping and all these things, because really what they're doing is trying to fill a hole inside themselves. Whereas if we resource ourselves, we feel good about ourselves, we can naturally give out much more to other people. Now I'm going to do a short exercise with you, and then I will also talk about the Conscious Leaders podcast that I run, some of the research I've done there, because I find the best people leaders I can, I hack into their brain about what's working, what's gone wrong, and how people learn from their philosophy and practice. And I've also got a bit of research to share with you about top leadership behaviors and trends. So you should walk away with a few kind of key behaviors that make great people leaders, and also some research bits too. So the short exercise, I'm just going to share my screen. It's just something for you to do individually. Everybody see my screen, okay? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I just want you to consider this. So I want you to think of a time when someone supported you and you achieved more than you originally thought you were capable of. So this could be in your personal life, your professional life. So just take a moment, maybe 30, 60 seconds, and just maybe jot down what kind of traits they showed to settle on someone. Notice what kind of traits they showed. Let's give you a minute. Thanks, how you describe them. And yeah, if you could shout out a few, that would be great. I'd love to hear any words that you'd use to describe this person that supported you to achieve more than you originally thought you were capable of. Just unmute yourself and give me a descriptive word.
Confidence.
Caring.
Trust.
Caring, trust, yeah.
Confidence.
Optimism.
Confident.
Belief.
Optimism.
Relaxed.
Supportive.
Relaxed.
Optimistic.
Supportive. Optimistic, okay.
Cheerleader.
Supportive.
Cheerleader, supportive. Anything else?
Kindness.
Goodness. Now, if we had longer, when we would have time to hear some of these stories, because some of these people are really formative in our lives, aren't they? That really support us to achieve more. And the truth is that these kind of traits are possible in people, in leaders, because of a sense of wholeness and self-esteem and self-management. And we know this because we know that we have mirror neurons in our mind and body that mirror the conscious and unconscious thoughts and feelings of other people. So if you're stressed and anxious and unsure of yourself, people feel it. We don't even have to say anything. People feel it in our neurology. But if we're strong in ourselves, if we're feeling, we're really looking after ourselves, people feel that too. So they feel our sense of wholeness. So all this stuff about kindness and confidence and caring and relaxed, that has to be cultivated internally before it can be, of course, people can mask something to a certain extent, a little bit, but really at any depth, and people need to have cultivated those things internally. So they feel that we don't need to prove ourselves to ourselves or to anyone, just like Danny did for me. It's really powerful. So the point is our mood is infectious. So people really feel our emotions in our neurology. This is passing between us, whether we like it or not. So how you feel really, really matters. Now, let's pan out to the research that I've been doing over the last 4 years. So I've been running the Conscious Leaders podcast, and I find the best people leaders I can, and I hack into their brain about what's working and what's gone wrong so others can learn from their philosophy and practice. So maybe you know a great people leader and you're like, oh, I've got just the person to recommend to Ruth, because they quite often come recommended. So I'll be keen to know if you do. And what I've done is just over a year ago, I published a book, and what I did is I digested their top traits and behaviors into these 9 lessons. So I discovered I was people were interested to know, what was it about these leaders that was common? What was it about these leaders that you're seeing commonly between them? So we can learn from them. We can learn from their stories, their habits, their great traits. And these were the nine things, both from their stories, from global research, and also from my experience as a facilitator and coach in organizations. Now, clearly we don't have time to talk about them all today, but we have talked a little bit about self-management or self-esteem, clearly quite different, but interlinked already. So I would like to go in to talk about intention and also listening. So these kind of foundational, I would call, 3 things, these 9 elements, they really build on each other. And I really think we need to start with these 3. We talked about listening at the beginning, massive as well. But just to talk about intention briefly, so strong intention is sometimes the one that people are most curious about. Like, what do you mean by intention? And what I mean is that positive intent you have for someone's capacity. So what you're thinking about them, and what you believe they're capable of doing or not. This is really, really key. And it's about looking at people at its best. It's looking at people like they're amazing, because they are. We all are. Of course, we all go through highs and lows, and we get in the wrong job sometimes, or things can go wrong. But essentially, we give people the best chance to perform well when we look at them like they're amazing. And to give you an example, I interviewed a partner from PwC, and I don't interview many corporate leaders. I do interview some, but it's harder for them to give me a really raw, honest story, which I want. I don't want the fluffy PR version. No, thanks. I want the raw truth. So anyway, Andy Woodfield from PwC is very honest and very open, and he's a very interesting character. Now, he told me a situation about one of his senior managers who was behaving really badly. So much so that her team were coming to him and saying that she was being nasty and obstructive. And he was really like, okay, we need to do something about this. So he sat her down and he said, what's going on, basically, because I'm conscious of your behavior, and even your team are coming to me now and telling me you're being nasty and obstructive. And I'm wondering, are you okay? It doesn't really seem like you. And I want to check in and ask if you're okay. And in that moment of giving her some really direct feedback, he also showed his faith for her in general and his belief in her capacity. And this intent, while a simple comment about, I know you're super capable anyway, I'm just wondering why this behavior is coming up now, like makes me wonder if you're okay, is massively powerful for them. Because people are like, oh, right, this is out of sync with what you usually expect of me or believe about what I'm capable of. And this links to the 3rd point, which is listening. And this is really exactly what Andy did next. So he asked her if she was okay, and then he listened. And when he did so, she opened up about a whole load of stuff that was going on personally, just like a real shitstorm of things. And overnight, her behavior changed, just like that. And people were like, what's happened? What have you done? And she's like, well, I'm not going to share any confidential information, but she's going through some stuff. Give her a little bit of slack, and it's going to get better. So this was mega stuff, but very simply done. And to give you another story around listening, it's a bit of a bigger picture story. I interviewed another leader who works for Specsavers, and he looks after 750 people in their manufacturing distribution division, so really big part of the business. And he's really fantastic leader in listening. And he had to do this for a really difficult time. So he was brought into a new site when employee engagement was pretty low. It was like 6 out of 10, which was really low for them. They were used to getting, 8s, 9s out of 10 for employee engagement. And they were like, you need to come in and sort this out. You've sorted out other sites. And he said, okay, to figure out how to do this. And what did he do? He listened. So he got together groups of people, I think it was like 20, 30 people at a time. And he said it was like falling on his sword. Like it was brutal. They got people in and they were like, tell us what's going wrong, and people just unleashed a whole tirade of stuff that wasn't working. And they didn't just listen once. They didn't just listen and then go off and, scurry away and hide. They kept listening. They would go back and they'd iterate and they'd change things, and then they'd check in again with staff. So they showed this kind of commitment to listening and also to changing what was happening. And they took that feedback willingly, without defense. And it shows that listening is really powerful, but also acting on that listening, really doing something about it that's fundamental, and listening again is powerful too. And if we pan out to the research on leadership, so what is the research telling us about modern leadership in our kind of complex world? I think it'd be fair to say. It says that this piece I think is particularly interesting because it pulls on two axes about what's happening at the moment. It says that one of those axes, the y-axis, is about agreement. So we used to have a time when people agreed with each other a lot or were told what to do. And now we don't have that. We actively hire diverse people because we want diversity of thought. We want a huge range of opinions. That's really important for business. And this other axis on certainty or uncertainty. So we also know that, particularly in our world, AI is like disrupting these massively. Our future is uncertain. That's clear. And all of these things mean that leadership has moved from this kind of very sort of structured and performance control-y function to one that is much more relational. It's all about interrelation. It's all about challenging people's assumptions, getting people to work through difficult conversations who maybe have completely different opinions, or work through a disagreement. It's about promoting that diversity of thought and helping people like bond with each other, make connections. They don't have to like each other, but they do need to collaborate. So how do they do that effectively? And this means that this role of a leader being all about being relational is where strong intention and listening, all these things play a really important role. It means that leaders need to look after themselves a lot, because I know I may be like you in the sense that I'm constantly stimulated by lots of different things, and you'll have many pressures on yourself as well, leading in your own businesses, different clients, stakeholders, social media. You might have WhatsApp, Teams, email. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm like, was that a text or a WhatsApp? Or, we've got so much firing at us. And that means that looking after ourselves, in order to resource ourselves to be relational, to be able to hold other people's rubbish, to be honest, hold their difficulty, their mental health challenges, helping their disagreements, becomes really, really vital. So nourishing things, looking after ourselves, is not optional extras in our lives. It's essential. And I guess my call to action to you to kind of conclude this talk, this session, is to see if you can walk away from here and address one or even all three of these areas. That's maybe something resonates with you. And the first one is self-management. It's looking after yourself. So we're in an always on society, and your well-being, looking after yourself in the morning might be the most important thing that you do that day. And you might have young children, so you might be like, well, the morning's off, so it might be the evening or another point in the day. But boundaries and protecting ourselves is vital. It's the foundation for everything. Your mood is infectious, so you need to look after yourself. We need to look after ourselves to show up for other people. And the second is developing a clear, strong intention for the people around us. Now, this could be in our businesses. It could also be in our families. We might have stories we've played about people for years, difficult people. Families are the most challenging one. I don't know about you, but I find that. But if we look at people like they're amazing, if we strip back some of the stories and think, can I look at this person for what they're capable of, then that will be really powerful, and they will feel a dynamic shift between you. And the third is listen deeply, because people will know whether you're listening or not. They'll feel it, even if they don't know it consciously. Unconsciously, they'll feel whether you're really present for them or not. And I want you to think back to that person that made you feel that you were more capable than you ever thought you realized. and know that you can be that person for someone else. So thank you for listening, and some resources there for you, and do feel free to connect. And of course, there's questions, be great.